Parents actually will be watching all the way from Norway.
What time is it in Norway right now?
It is, what time is it here?
12:20?
So it's just about 9:22 p.m. there right now.
All right, we're going to stay up late for this. Are we set? Okay.
We're good. All right.
All righty. Well,
Take it away, Laura.
okay, sounds good. Well, welcome everyone to another Gender 101. This is a little bit different from last time, but I appreciate that people have requested to have another one of these gender presentations. Most of you don't know me, or most of you do know me, I apologize. I'm Laura Johnson, a licensed mental health counselor here in Tacoma. I have a private practice called Holding Out Hope Counseling. I started working with the gender non-conforming community, and that's an umbrella term that I use, just FYI. Lots of people fit into that umbrella term. But I started working with the gender non-conforming community about 7 years ago. My website kind of indicated that I offered counseling to same-sex couples, and I think trans folks just made the leap that if I was comfortable with same-sex couples, that I would be comfortable with trans folks too. So very quickly I realized I needed to get some training, so I spent several hours training with a guru in our community and have been offering gender-affirming care since. At this point, it's probably about 2/3 of my practice, and that fit under the LGBTQIA rainbow. And this time, though, Ella is, I asked Ella to join me in the presentation.
All right, so most of you know me as well. My name's Ella Anderson. I currently work as an EMT here in Pierce County with AMR. How am I part of this LGBTQIA plus acronym? I identify as lesbian and gender nonconforming, and we will get to those terms. So if you don't know them already, that's fine. We're getting there. I've also been a co-leader of a LGBT plus group at PLU. It was a safe space where people could come and talk amongst each other, get some friends, get to know other people within the community, and either together or separate, figure out where on that journey you were in identifying yourself and your sexuality.
So we realized we had some of you that would be streaming with us and thought, how are they going to ask questions? So I put my work phone up there, and please text with questions that you may have as we go along. We're going to do about half of this, probably about 20 minutes, and then we're going to leave a space for questions. For those of you that are here live, right, we pass note cards around, so you are welcome to write your questions on a note card if you'd like to, but you're also welcome to ask your questions. What we'll do with that is we'll have Ella go with the microphone, and we'll have you tell Ella your question, and then Ella will use the microphone to say the question out loud. So there's not a lot of us breathing into the microphone. So, all right, next slide, Steve. Austin Hartke, in his book Transforming the Bible and Lives of Transgender Christians, asks us to consider the dualities of creation, right? Night and day, land and sea, man and woman. And some of you will remember this from last time. We all know, though, that it's not just night and day, and it's not just land and sea. Like, can you imagine if it was just night and day, if it was like light and then dark, and that's it? How much splendor and beauty we would lose because we didn't have dusk, and we didn't have dawn, and we didn't have sunrise, and we didn't have sunsets. And how about solar and lunar eclipses, right? I mean, consider the solar eclipse we just experienced. It feels like COVID, these 2 years, like, just don't exist, right? I was reading this, and it's like, the solar eclipse we just experienced a few months ago. Well, it's like 3 years ago now, right? And, you know, during that, in the peak of that eclipse, was it night? Was it day? Was it maybe both? Was it maybe neither? Right? One of my favorite times of the evening is when the sky gets that midnight blue, right? And it's not really nighttime, but it's not daytime either, right? And consider if we only had land and sea, right? And we didn't have marshes or wetlands or rivers or lakes or the numerous other bodies of water that are not land and sea. So why are we so insistent on men and women only being man and woman? And can we begin to let go of that duality, of that binary? Because that duality really isn't in land and sea and night and day either. And can we begin to consider that there's maybe more than just man and woman? And can we begin to let go of that binary system of understanding gender and let ourselves experience the beauty that gender diversity has to offer? Just like the beauty and splendor we experience in wetlands, marshlands, dusk dawn, and the midnight blue skies, right? Can we begin to consider gender from that framework? The framework that God may have created many genders, not just two. Because the reality is as long as there have been human beings, there have been people that have fallen outside the male-female duality or binary. So why should we care as a church, right? Half of the queer identified adults claim a religious affiliation, and 17% consider their faith very important in their lives. In my work with gender nonconforming folks, most of them are very spiritual. And some of them have been deeply wounded by the church, but would love to be churched again, but it's terrifying for them. And sometimes they're beginning to explore the faith that excluded them, that is maybe beginning to include them now. So similar to you and me, they just want a safe place to worship as well. When I did this last time, there was one of my trans folks that came and wanted to support me, right? And definitely wounded by the church as a younger person, and had to take anti-anxiety meds to leave their house, right? Pulled up here, sat in the car for probably 15 minutes, breathing, took another anti-anxiety med to come here and be here, but made it in, right? And so, but that's the extent that some folks have been wounded by the church, and some are willing to step foot into the church, others take great measures to step foot into a church.
Yeah, so I just want you all to take a second and think about like a time where you have not felt welcome or not felt as an outsider, right? Maybe think back to high school. You were in the lunchroom and there's a bunch of tables and you want to sit down somewhere. Maybe you want to sit with the cool kids, but they say, nope, can't sit here, even though there are 10 open chairs, right? So that's a lot how LGBTQ plus folks feel in the churches, right? We have lots of open pews, and yet we aren't necessarily welcome. But with that, Bethany has been a great church for me and for Laura as well. This is a place that we have felt welcome. Even when it's packed, we still get to have a seat with the rest of you. It's been a great home for us to be part of. So we're going to start learning some terms here, and by some I actually mean a lot. We've got the first one here is gender identity. So this one refers to your innermost concept of self as male, female, a mix of both, or neither. And so this is how the individual perceives themselves and what they call themselves. One's gender identity can be the same or different from your biological sex or your sex assigned at birth. We have sexual orientation, and this one refers to who am I sexually or romantically attracted to, right? Am I attracted to females? Am I attracted to males? Am I attracted to both? Or later on we'll get to other variations of sexual orientation. So we have gender assigned at birth. So this one is, right, someone has a baby and they say, it's a girl, or it's a boy. So that's what we're talking about. Really, we're talking about the parts, the hormones, and the reproductive system. Are they male? Are they female? We have cisgender. This refers to a person whose identity lines up with their biological sex or sex assigned at birth. So a cisgendered person will then be a person who identifies as a female and is born as a female, and often will present in their mannerisms, in their clothing, in their maybe their hair, and you can very easily tell that they are female. We have intersex. Intersex used to be referred to as hermaphrodite. That's people born with several variations of sex characteristics, both physically and hormonally. So that is, you can be born with both hormone parts of female and male. A lot of times parents might decide at birth that they would like their child to be one or the other. Or sometimes people decide that they would like to wait until their child hits puberty, until their child can figure out who they identify as, and then proceed with either removing one hormone or reproductive system, or not remove any at all. We also have gender nonconforming. So this is a term that describes a person whose gender does not conform to societal norms, societal expectations based on gender assigned at birth. So that would be me. I am born as a female. However, I do not necessarily identify as a female. I identify more as gender nonconforming. I don't feel like a female. I don't dress like a female. I've got short hair. Back in the day, that would be, oh, well, you're not a female if you have short hair. Transgender. Laura will talk a lot more about transgender here, but I'll give you the definition. So this is a term that can apply to all people for whom their current gender identity is different from what you would expect from them by society. So they are born a female, however, they feel that they are male and would like to go through with some sort of transition to live that life as a male, not a female. This includes physical or social transitions. Also, remember that even though the word transgender is often used alongside the terms lesbian, gay, and bisexual, as in our acronym LGBTQ or LGBT, transgender, however, is talking about a gender identity and not a sexual orientation. So lesbian is looking at you are a female who is attracted to female. Gay is, well, there's two. It can be males, used only as males attracted to males, but also kind of an umbrella term of also females attracted to females. You could say that you're gay, or you could use the term lesbian. Bisexual as well refers to your sexual identity, or sexual attraction, sorry. Trans man and trans woman, so that's typically what it is. You go from one sex to the next. We have a female to male, also known as FTM or F2M, and this is a person who is assigned female at birth who then transitions either socially or physically to become a male and live as a male. They often refer to themselves as a trans man or a trans man. We have male to female, which would be also known as MTF or M2F. And this is a person who is assigned male at birth and now would like to transition and be a female, either transition socially or physically, to live as a female, and they are often known as trans women. We have a couple more terms for you. We have gender fluid. So this one describes a person has a shifting and changing notion of their own gender. They don't feel that a gender is fixed, so they're kind of going with, it's not necessarily just female and male. I can be in between. Gender diverse and gender expansive is people who do not conform to expectations that the society has for your gender. So, I mean, you could say that I'm also gender diverse and gender expansive, as I do not, as a born female, do not conform to societal expectations of a female. We have bigender, and bigender is when a person might switch between genders in different contexts. So they're taking a welding class and they feel very masculine, even though they're a female, but they might also love to dress in skirt and high heels and go out to the bar and flirt with boys. We have pangender. So pangender refers to people who embrace all genders. So they're not saying that I'm attracted to females or males. They're saying that I'm attracted to the person, whether or not they are female or male or identify as anything in between. We're gender queer. These people who identify as gender queer often feel that their primary sense of felt gender is neither male nor female, but somewhere in between. So kind of goes with pangender people who say, I'm not specifically attracted to one or the other, or there is not this gender or that gender. It's always kind of on a spectrum, right? We don't have night and day. We have everything in between night and day. Stealth is a term used to refer to a person who passes as their desired gender at all times and who may have broken contact with everyone who knew their gender history. This is really important to stress. Do not out people. We do not like to be outed for many reasons. One, this is our story to tell, right? How it's the same with if you have decided to have a child, you're the one who wants to tell people that you're pregnant. You don't want other people to be talking behind your back and telling everybody that you are pregnant. This is your joy news to share with people that you would like to share with. Maybe you don't want to share with certain people, and that's okay. So don't out people. Also, do not expect gender nonconforming people or trans people to educate you regarding their gender, right? I wouldn't walk up to a stranger and see that they're transgender and automatically say, please tell me how your transition's been going. And they'll look at you and say, I don't even know you. Why am I going to talk about my parts? So we've gone over several terms. Guess what? There are even more terms, but we won't go through those. Just know that there are several other terms. If you want to look into it and maybe get yourself a little more confused, you can do so. More terms. We love terms in this community, don't we? We gotta label everything. These terms that you see up here, sex change, passing, gender dysphoria, trans women, these are all typically used when referring to trans community, which Laura will talk about more. We put this one up here because this just kind of depicts that we come in all shapes, sizes, identities, sexual, gender identities. But really, we are just people. Even though, like, you might have someone who looks female, they might not identify as female, so therefore we always say, "Hey Laura, what pronouns do you go by?"
I use she, her pronouns, but if you want to practice they, them, I'm totally good with that too.
So just because Laura looks like a female and is born a female does not mean that she would like female pronouns. So therefore, we always ask people. I typically go by they, them, their. Some people are like, "I did not know." Well, I've not actually made like a big old grand announcement saying, "These are my pronouns."
Now they have.
Now I have.
No. They have.
Yes. All right, so genderbread person. We've all handed you out the sheet. Feel free to fill this out now or in your own time. I really like this exercise because it looks at all aspects of you, right? Your gender identity is what's in your head, what you know you are. Your gender expression is when people look at you, what do they see you as? And how do you dress and what do you want people to see you as, right? I don't wear women's clothes necessarily because I don't want people to look at me and really identify me as a female. However, I also don't really want people saying, "That's a boy." I guess I'd be more in that spectrum of I don't want to put a label on it. We have attraction, so that's who are you sexually and romantically attracted to. Biological sex, what are you born with? And I'll show you my genderbread person here. So with this one,
Want me to find it for you? Up there.
all right, so for this one, you'll see gender identity. I put that I am quite more male than female for gender identity. This is how I feel that I am. I know I do not identify much as a female, despite being born a female. For my gender expression, I put that I am more masculine than feminine. Also because I'm more comfortable dressing the way that I am dressed today. I do not like to have tight-fitting pants and show off my body parts. I have short hair. I have a small chest. Yes, that makes me definitely look more male, or characteristically what our society has defined as male. For biological sex, so I actually put both. Really, I am actually born a female, full female, not intersex. However, I did put the part male because, in my opinion, my body shape with the small chest is more typical male. I am sexually attracted to females, and I'm romantically attracted to females. This is who I am. I know that's what I am. A lot of people will ask, well, how do you know? I really can't explain how I know. It's just, this is me. Laura, this is you.
Okay, all right. So just like there's many ways to express the cisgender identity, right? Like I'm a cisgender woman, but I probably, I grew up a tomboy. I got misgendered as a kid all the time. I still get misgendered today, probably about once a month. And I'm like, oh, cool, that's neat to me, right? I love that. I love that people don't see me as just only female. Because I really identify male some as well. And last time I talked about kind of my gender identity, right? I think I'm 62. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a time where tomboy was accepted, but tomboy today is really a gender fluid person, right? That might be one of the identities of a tomboy today, right? And I identify more gender fluid. So there's times where, today I'm kind of a mix and match. I have my men's jeans on, but a little more of some women's clothing. There's times you'll see me in my men's shoes, men's jeans, and an Oxford shirt, right? Yeah, see? And that's when I wake up and I feel like I just feel a little more male today, right? And on the other hand, like I don't want any surgeries. I'm very fine with the body I was born into and the sex, my natal sex that I was born into. If for some reason I had to have a bilateral mastectomy, I would say do the best you can to create a male chest on me, right? But I have that female brain, right? Ella and I might be out and we got our boy shorts on, right, our board shorts on, and Ella might be comfortable because they know themselves more as male, like taking their shirt off. Because I understand myself more as female, even if I had a male chest created, I don't know that I'd ever be comfortable taking my shirt off, right? So that's just kind of an idea, another way, just my gender and my gender identity, and one more person that doesn't quite fit the gender norm to tell you about. So some people are more comfortable in the middle of the spectrum, others aren't, right? Some people don't use gender at all. They're like, gender is a socially constructed concept, right? Man created the idea of gender, and I'm genderless, right? So there is that too.
And that is okay. You do not have to identify as one or the other, or both, or neither. That's fine.
Yep. Some people want their bodies and visual appearance to consistently align with societal norms for that gender, right? Even a good amount of my transgender folks are like, I want my trans women, they're like, I want to look female. I want to look female. I want to pass as female. I want to look female. And a lot of my transgender men are like, I want to pass as a man. I don't want these hips, right? I want to pass as a man. So the binary is still alive and well, and we're not saying get rid of the binary. We're just saying expand your brains, right? Think outside of the binary model as well, right? So really, when people tell me who they are, I just believe them, right? It's not really for me to decide who you are, right? So I believe them. It's not for me to decide. It's not for you to decide. It's our knowing of ourselves, right? How did y'all know you were cisgender, maybe? Right? You just knew, right? You just knew. There wasn't like, oh, God, huh, right? It's a knowing we have, right? And it's hard to explain, but it's a knowing people have of themselves. All right, I think the next slide is questions. Yeah, so can we answer any questions at this point? That handout was great too. It had a lot of the terminology in it. I think Pastor got from APSI. And so, take that home, read through it, study it, right? The vocabulary is huge, and you don't need to know a ton of vocabulary. I learned 2 things on that handout. Right? So having done this work for like 7 or 8 years, I learned still. So, and I have my gender nonconforming clients teaching me new vocabulary frequently. So, yeah. So questions?
Will you check your phone as well?
Yeah, I just did. Nothing.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to hold it? Yes, I do have a question. Okay, so I would like advice for those of us old-fashioned folks who associate the term they and them as plural. Because I've had somebody say to me, they will be there, and I immediately think more than one. So how do I adapt my thinking, or what questions do I ask that aren't going to offend,
Yeah.
so that I understand the answers correctly?
Absolutely. Great question. Great question. So,
I think you'll answer this one, yeah.
Yeah. We all have like millions of neural pathways in our brain, right? That says they, them is not singular. It's plural, right? But let me challenge that, right? So if somebody goes to the store and I don't know who they are, I might be, yeah, that person went to the store. They went to the store to get some potato chips, right? If I didn't know who they were, what their gender was, what their identity was, I would use they in singular at that point, right? So it has been singular for a long time. We just don't use it very frequently, right? And the fact is that like we have millions of neural pathways. Our brain is like this I-5 going up to Seattle. That is like this huge superhighway of neural pathways. That is that it's he or she or him or her, right? And we are not used to they and them or some of the other pronouns. Even in my work, I don't think I've had one client use other pronouns other than they, them, he, she, him, her. Him, he, him, sorry. And so it's really about retraining ourselves, right? Retraining, creating a different neural pathway. And what's brilliant about us is that our brains in their efficiency, when we begin to not use one neural pathway, it sends whatever molecules, atoms, to build a different neural pathway, right? And how do we get good at anything? We practice it, right? In one of these that I did for a church, I had a grandmother ask me, they said, my grandchild is using they, them pronouns, and I can't get used to it. And I'm like, and they're across the country from me. I said, well, do you have a picture of your grandchild? They said, yeah, I do. I said, put a sticky on it that says they, them. And every time you walk by that, say your grandchild's name and say they, them. And when I meet someone, I will be like, Faye, nice to meet you. And then quietly in my brain, I go, Faye, like 20 times, right? That's how we create a new neural pathway, right? So that's what I would recommend doing, right? And be gracious to yourself. You're not going to get it all the time, and we talk more about that too.
So what about the second part of that? And that is, if I don't know, when somebody's talking to me and they use they in a sentence and I'm unclear, how do I ask a question for clarification without offending?
You got it, Ella? I
Yeah,
just asked.
state that question one more time, sorry.
Okay, so somebody says to me, they are coming over to your house. And I don't know if this is a singular or a plural they. How do I clarify without offending when I ask the question?
Just ask.
Ask
I
them,
just
you're
asked.
not asking that person who identifies as, or uses the pronouns they, them, their, so you can ask the other person who has said that they are coming over.
I
Yeah.
can say, who is they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and ask is, what I would do is say, oh, I noticed the they pronoun. Do they use they, them pronouns? They're like, oh, no, I just identified them. Like, oh, well, what pronouns do they use? At this point in my practice, I don't care if you look like completely cisgender. When you walk through my door, I'm like, I'm Laura Johnson. I use she, her pronouns. What pronouns do you use? Right? And some people look at me like I have 3 heads. And I then will I say, I do a lot of work with gender nonconforming and trans community, and I just don't want to assume pronouns anymore, right? So that's what I say. Yeah, but it was uncomfortable to begin with, right? To ask people's pronouns, it really was. And it's just super comfortable now, but it was uncomfortable to begin with. So push through the discomfort, doesn't take long.
All right, we have one more question over here.
Maybe it's more of a comment, but let's say you have a close family member that is trans male, wants the pronoun of he, him. However, most of the family is not affirming or doesn't even know. Most of your Christian friends, you're fairly certain would not be accepting either, and maybe know this family member. So switching in my brain, I want to be respectful and affirming to my loved one, referring to the pronoun that they identify with. And yet when I'm referring to my loved one with others that don't know this information, I'm terrified I'm going to slip up. And I have a couple times, and so I don't know how to get around that other than just referring to my loved one by their first name constantly in the sentence, but it seems really awkward because because your natural speech is just, and I've been accustomed to this for so long. So I guess what I'm saying is I practice really hard with affirming terms with my loved one. It's just, I have sort of anxiety because I don't want to unintentionally out them because my family is really not very safe.
Yeah. And so I think with that, like check in with your loved one and see what they want around your family, right? Because they might not be comfortable, but they might, right? They might be like, I don't really care that they're not safe, right? Like I'm going to stand in who I am and yeah. So check in with your loved one to see what, see what they would want you to do, right? Around your family that may not feel safe to them and maybe not feel safe to you too. And I think that's a really beautiful conversation to have, right? To just say, it's hard for me. I don't feel safe when I use your correct pronouns around them. And so
Maybe that's where you go to using their name, whether they've changed their name to reflect who they are. But if they haven't, a name might be a safe thing to say instead of using pronouns. Always refer to that person with their name, right? Ella was here instead of she was here. Ella was there. Ella did this. Ella did that instead of he, she, they. And that might possibly work better.
Well, I mean, not using their dead name. I mean, try not to use their dead name, but maybe their nickname, which we've used since that family member was a little child. Sort of a longer version, though, a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do try to do that. That's
Yeah.
a good suggestion.
So
Yeah.
what's your name?
Marcia.
So Marcia just mentioned a term, dead name.
Yeah.
Laura, you want to explain that one real quick?
Yeah, so dead name is if my name at all doesn't match my gender identity and I decide to choose a new name that matches my gender identity, my previous name is my dead name, right? And some people for some people it feels that significant that like that person isn't alive. I am this person. I had a conversation with Beth not very long ago, and I'm like, I'd kind of been thinking about being Laura and being Lauren, like kind of embracing that male piece of me too, right? And like letting that name be just kind of interchangeable. I'm not there yet, right? I'll let you know if I get there, right? But that, but for some people, that name that they were assigned at birth is so not them. Priscilla is not Frank, right? And there's no way of getting around that. And what's really interesting is that a lot of my trans folks will ask their parents, what would my name have been if I would have been born this other gender, right? And so some choose that name, right? Really in continuing to honor their family. Some people don't have that relationship with their family, unfortunately, that they can do that, right? Some people a lot of people choose a very gender neutral name. Alex, Lauren, right? So, yeah. But for some people it really is. Like that person's dead. They never have existed. I've always been this person, right? So that's where dead name comes from.
One question over here.
All right, Preston.
Yes. I recently, or within the last 2 years or so, the Oxford English Dictionary has recognized that they can be used in a singular sense. However, it still can provide lack of clarity when using it as a language. And I have found many times using Z and Zay, the Z-H-E and Z-H-E-Y as a singular person that's gender neutral, and it doesn't confuse with they, using the plural that way. So using like Zay.
Absolutely, yep. And interesting, right? Like, in my years, I haven't had a person come into my practice asking to use those pronouns or identifying that. Yeah. All right, let me just check online real quick. Nope.
Okay, and then we had one written question here. It says, why do you think Z0, sorry, I'm really bad at reading.
Yeah, why hasn't it caught on in the U.S.? I think it's the neural pathway thing, right? If I can remember correctly, I think that's maybe a little more Scandinavian, right? Where they've been more open about gender in general, right? And so I think it's just the neural pathway thing, right? I mean, man, gender nonconforming folks, trans folks, they fight hard to live their authentic life, right? And so asking people to use they, them even is like, a battle, right? So I think to embrace like the Zer would just be, I don't know that trans folks have enough faith in the rest of us to do that. I really think that's probably what it amounts to. I got some head shakes, yeah. So. All right. Gender, any other questions real quick? All right, cool. So gender dysphoria, this is my work as a therapist, right? It's that strong feeling or knowing that a person's gender doesn't match their biology or their primary or secondary sex characteristics, right? It's a mismatch between my knowing of myself, my brain's internal map, and my actual physical body. And it's the feelings of distress that come with that, right? I mean, imagine being assigned male at birth and growing a chest, right? And feel like, how uncomfortable would you feel with that, right? It would be horribly uncomfortable. So the distress presents itself in many ways, right? It presents itself in depression. It presents itself in oppression, right? Like sometimes people have been denied or have denied their own gender for so long, they've oppressed their gender. And most trans folks will tell me that they went through times in their life where they really did. I mean, this was just too hard, so they really tried to oppress their gender identity. And, most of us have heard Ron's testimony about how hard that became for Ron to suppress his sexual identity. It really does lead to some very distressful thoughts. So depression, oppression, anxiety, huge anxiety, social anxiety. A really interesting phenomenon going on right now in my young people is I don't want to call it dissociative identity disorder. So we used to know that as, I can't remember what we used to know it as. The movie,